Welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. This segment will focus on an organization that has a long history of fighting to create a world where all people live free of poverty and discrimination. They also work to protect and expand civil rights and workers' rights through leadership development, community organizing, and empowerment. It is a pleasure to have Christine Neumann-Ortiz, who's the co-founder and executive director of Voces de la Frontera with us. How are you, Christine?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Andrea, for inviting me on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you here today. If you would tell us more about Voces de la Frontera and what you do to actually help make a difference in the lives of the people you serve on a daily basis.
One of the things that's unique about Voces de la Frontera is that it's really grown bottom up. So we are a membership-led organization. We have chapters throughout the state. We have youth chapters called Youth Empowered in the Struggle. And we have always seen the struggle for immigrant rights as a larger struggle of labor rights in this country, of racial justice. And so it's very much informed our the alliances we've formed and our understanding of what we're up against and what it takes to change it. And so really linking the struggle. What is predominantly, a lot of our members are Latino and immigrant. We are the largest Latino-based organization, but we are multiracial, especially our youth arm. And we see like linking those struggles as very key. People might know us most well known as for our big statewide general strikes called Day Without Latinx and Immigrants that have involved tens of thousands of people to successfully defeat anti-immigrant measures. Here, they were about to be signed into law, for example, in 2016 and 2017, two state anti-sanctuary bills, as well as 287G, when then former Sheriff Clark tried to bring that right after the 2016 election, bring that to Milwaukee County. And in that instance, 60,000 people came out against that. And so it's been these coalition building, and really everything we've done every step of the way involves the community in these decisions. And it's leadership development to understand the structures that make these decisions that impact our lives, whether that's in the workplace or that are impacting issues around the criminal justice system, workplace, school, all of these things. It's kind of unveiling that and how we can have a voice in that process.
You guys actually started off as a newspaper in Texas back in 1994, and then you fast forward to today, and you have definitely grown to do some amazing things.
A big collective accomplishment is that we're going to be opening our statewide office here in Milwaukee. At the beginning of September, we're hoping to finally move in there, and it's going to be able to house a lot of the services that sometimes people really see us out there in the public in terms of these actions and things like that. But we also have a very excellent kind of one-stop shop for, it's called New American, for helping people get their citizenship. It includes English classes, citizenship classes, legal support, like a legal clinic, and as well as like worker rights information, information for youth who need help around, you know, if their parents never went to college, to maneuver that process, especially if you're a DACA recipient or undocumented, you know, what kind of resources do you have? So there's a lot of also critical services, but all of that, we always look at it to an eye towards understanding that this is what we have, this is how we can build collective power. So even you know, the right citizenship, that we don't see that as an individual thing or something limited to your family, but it's part of also building political empowerment of immigrants in Wisconsin. There are now 29,000 newly naturalized immigrants since 2016 that will be eligible to vote in November. We have 23,000 Latino youth who will be able to vote for the first time in November. And so voter education, voter engagement, all of that. It's also about not looking at it as an individual, but that we're part of a larger movement for social justice.
Since we are still in the middle of this pandemic, we know that Black and Hispanic patients represented nearly 2/3 of coronavirus deaths among those younger than 65, mainly due to poverty, underlying medical conditions, and a large number of individuals working essential jobs. So Voces de la Frontera is providing information that is related to COVID-19, including a direct relief fund, which I feel is pretty amazing considering the statistics that I just read.
It started first really in Green Bay. Knew of people, had family working in the meatpacking plants there, and also Facebook posts where workers were going out and asking for help. People were getting sick, family members were getting sick, and there were no protections going on, and they were just really asking out. So we decided to create a campaign called and set up a kind of a protocol to respond to this called the Essential Worker Rights Campaign. And what we have done is set up the structure so that workers can reach out to us anonymously, and we can file complaints on their behalf with OSHA as well as with the health department. And then because we know these policies are recommendations, they actually don't have, really the force of law. I mean, broadly speaking, like, yes, you have the rights to workplace, but in terms of the pandemic and really implementing, it really becomes critical that this gets flushed out into the public and that workers are supported. And that's been part of the strategy. So sharing those communications with elected officials in that community, and making it public and really encouraging people to come out and humanize the reality and make it visible. And because of that, for example, I am in American, in the two companies, the two meatpacking plants, American Foods and JBS in Green Bay, because of that intervention and workers speaking out who had been affected, the health department, came in, did massive testing. That's why we were able to see that because of that intervention, at that point, 40% of the cases in Wisconsin had originated in those two meatpacking plants and then spread out. And again, those are jobs where people are working together for, shoulder to shoulder, long hours, and disproportionately people of color are doing those jobs. Not entirely, but that's who's doing a lot of those jobs. They don't have, Black and Latinos are being impacted disproportionately because they're mostly in jobs where they're not able to work from home.
Absolutely.
Or food production, those jobs. And so that we have continued to do that. I want to highlight that two cases right now we are giving grave importance to has to do with Briggs and Stratton in Milwaukee, as well as Echo Lakes, which is in Burlington. And I say that because there are in both places workers who were struggling to win these protections actually died. To date, the company has not recognized publicly to the workforce itself that they both passed of COVID-19. And that fight still continues to this day around winning protections. What we have seen over and over again, I will say this because it's an opportunity of how can people help, not just hear about it, but what can I do about it? How can I help? It is critical that we support workers who are speaking out, and in this case, which means filing a complaint even. And so what we're asking people is to contact these companies to ask them to not only implement these protections, of which OSHA are in active investigation in both cases, but to directly, or as consumers, to really for the companies that are buying these products, say, we want to buy a product where we know workers are being protected. And so that's an important piece. The second thing is the emergency fund that you referenced, because many families, if you're a mixed immigration status family, you cannot, if you're an undocumented worker, you cannot, even though you contribute, you cannot get unemployment, or if you're a mixed immigration status family, your entire family cannot get federal aid. So that's donating to that. Sadly, we have given contributions to funerals of workers who have died in COVID-19 who've been fighting for these protections. But it's also to just help families, and it's a very important contribution. And I would say, lastly, it's also about getting these companies to provide paid sick days. that this has been, in both of those cases at Echo Lakes and Briggs, the failure of these companies to provide paid sick days, or inadequately, not at all, or inadequately, meant workers were forced to come to work sick. So those are, I think, speaking out, supporting workers that are speaking out and contributing. And lastly, I'd say participating in the elections, because at this point, all we can do is work at the local level to have stronger protections. But at the state level and federal level, there needs to be change. And I don't think that's going to happen unless we participate.
The fall primary, of course, is coming up on August 11th, and the fall general elections, November 3rd. Before we run out of time, we know that during the pandemic, we also saw the peaceful protesting dealing with social injustice. There were the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and here in Milwaukee, Joel Acevedo, who was killed at the home of off-duty police officer Michael Mattioli a few months back during the stay-at-home order. And Voices is a part of that fight for justice. You recently co-sponsored a rally in downtown Milwaukee to demand justice for Joel, and nationally known attorney Benjamin Crump and so many others came together to get this message across. With the time we have, please feel free to talk about your fight for social injustice or racial injustice.
I think this is a really historic fight, actually. The case of Joel Acevedo, we've been working with Justice Wisconsin, the Joel Acevedo family. And the reason that Attorney Crump has really embraced this is, number one, because it mirrors so much of what happened to George Floyd in terms of the strangulation. And it's a Puerto Rican family. And there is, what the Joel Acevedo family has done is really broken the silence, because not enough Latino families have spoken out about the situation where having a family member deal with police brutality leading to death or physical abuse. And it's so important, and it's been embraced as really a uniting Black and Brown Lives Matter movement, linking accountability with police brutality for both the Black and the Brown community. And that is powerful in of itself. Locally, I mean, what we think, needs to be happening is that, I think it's shameful that this is getting as played out as it has been. Chief Morales could have from the get-go fired Officer Mattioli. After that was the investigation clearly showing he had committed reckless homicide. There's no excuse for him not doing that. And he really punted it to the Fire and Police Commission, but we are making progress. There is now the Fire and Police Commission will be voting on a policy that was introduced by new Common Council Representative Jocasta Samaripa to ban chokeholds, as well as calling for his dismissal. What is still pending is obviously the release of the 911 call and the video.
Yeah.
And I think lastly, the Fire and Police Commission, we have seen over and over again, is a critical body. We saw that in our Fight for ICE Out of Milwaukee campaign, but we need to ensure that we also send a strong message to the mayor and the Common Council members that we need to have a strong Fire and Police Commission where there is clear criteria and process, and that in consultation with groups from the Community Collaborative Commission, Coalition for People's Sheriff, we can put candidates forward that can be part of that oversight, community oversight body over the police. It is, we have it because we have such a bad record. And I think this is a historic moment. There's a willingness to make change, and now's the time to do it.
Thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time to talk about all the things that's happening, but you have definitely given us some great information, and I thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Christine Neumann-Ortiz is the co-founder and executive director of Voces de la Frontera. If you want more information on anything we've discussed this morning, visit vdlf.org or call 414-643-1620. And that is going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Thank you for watching. And again, I hope you join us again next week as we take another look at our issues in Milwaukee. Have a great day.